Something changes after 50. Not loudly, not all at once, but one day you notice people look past you instead of through you. They pause less when you speak. They assume before you explain. And in that quiet shift, something important is being revealed. It can feel confusing at first, even painful. You wonder if you did something wrong, if you said the wrong thing, if time has somehow erased your value without asking your permission. But what's happening has very little to do with your worth, and almost everything to do with how the world responds to age, presence, and quiet strength. When you're younger, attention comes easily. People listen because they expect noise. They expect ambition. They expect you to push, to prove, to perform. After 50, the expectations change. And when expectations change, so does behavior. Some people grow uncomfortable around depth. Others don't know how to interact without competition. And many simply don't know what to do with someone who no longer seeks approval. So they pull back, they underestimate, they speak over you, or they offer polite distance instead of real engagement. At first, this feels like loss of relevance, loss of status, loss of being seen. But this stage reveals something far more interesting. It reveals who only respected you when you were useful. It reveals who needed you loud, eager, or compliant. And it reveals who is unsettled by someone who has nothing left to prove. There is a moment, usually subtle, when you realize you are no longer being managed by other people's opinions. You notice it when you stop rushing to explain yourself, when silence starts to feel safer than words, when you choose peace instead of persuasion. This is not weakness. This is not withdrawal. This is recalibration. The psychology of respect changes with age. When you were younger, respect was often performative. It came from speed, from productivity, from how well you fit into someone else's system. Later in life, respect becomes something else entirely. It becomes energetic, unspoken, observed rather than granted. People sense when you are no longer trying to impress them, and this makes some lean in, and others step back. Those who lean in are drawn to calm authority. Those who step back were never comfortable with it. Being treated differently after 50 is often the result of one quiet truth. You no longer chase belonging, and when you stop chasing, the dynamic changes. There's an unspoken rule in human psychology. Those who seek validation are easier to control. Those who don't are harder to read. After years of life, you have patterns stored in your nervous system. You know when to speak. You know when silence says more. You know when something is not worth correcting. That kind of restraint unsettles people who live on reaction. So they test you. They interrupt. They minimize. They offer subtle disrespect to see if you will scramble for footing. And when you don't, something shifts. They may never say it out loud, but they feel it. You are not playing the same game anymore. Aging reveals who respects boundaries and who only respects performance, who honors presence and who only values output, who can sit with quiet strength and who needs constant motion to feel secure. This is why some relationships fade, not because of conflict, but because the old roles no longer fit. You stop being the fixer, the explainer, the emotional laborer, the one who smooths everything over, and without that role, some people don't know how to connect. This can hurt, especially when it comes from family, colleagues, or longtime friends. But here is the quiet revelation. Distance is not always rejection. Sometimes it is respect in disguise, and sometimes it is exposure. Exposure of dynamics that only worked when you were overgiving. After 50, you begin to notice how often silence carries authority. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of self-trust. You don't rush to fill gaps anymore. You let pauses exist. You let other people reveal themselves. And in those pauses, you learn more than words ever gave you. You see who listens when you speak slowly, who grows impatient when you don't entertain them, who becomes uneasy when you don't justify your choices. This stage of life strips away false urgency. You realize how little actually requires your explanation. Most means don't need defending. They need acceptance. And acceptance doesn't come from convincing others. It comes from standing still in your truth. People treat you differently because you no longer bend, not in dramatic ways, but in small, essential ones. You don't laugh at things that disrespect you. You don't engage in conversations that drain you. You don't respond to every provocation. And that restraint is noticed. Some interpret it as distance, others as arrogance, but the perceptive ones recognize it as groundedness. There is a deep psychological shift that happens when a person becomes internally anchored. They no longer need external permission to exist fully. That freedom is unsettling to those still seeking approval. After 50, you may find that fewer people ask for your opinion, not because it lacks value, but because it carries weight. Weight requires responsibility, and not everyone wants to hear something that cannot be easily dismissed. So they avoid. They change the subject. They assume you are out of touch. Let them. There is dignity in not correcting every misunderstanding. You begin to understand that being underestimated is not always a disadvantage. It gives you space to observe, space to choose your battles, and space is power. The world often mistakes quiet for weakness, but quiet that comes from clarity is frank refined. You've lived long enough to know that attention is not the same as respect.
that noise is not the same as influence, and the present speaks even when you don't. This is why people treat you differently. You carry less need, and need is what fuels manipulation. When someone cannot read your insecurities, they cannot control you. That is deeply unsettling to some. So they dismiss, they minimize, they label you irrelevant. And in doing so, they reveal their own fear of aging, stillness, and depth. After 50, life invites you into a quieter relationship with yourself. You listen more closely to your body. You honor your energy. You stop forcing alignment where there is none. This inward turn changes how you show up. You become selective with your words. You choose clarity over charisma. You value peace over applause. And the world responds accordingly. Some doors close, others open more slowly. But the ones that open now are real. They don't require performance. They require presence. You may notice that younger people sometimes look to you differently, not with excitement, but with curiosity or caution. They sense that you've walked past they haven't yet imagined, and that can be intimidating.
You no longer offer quick reassurance. You offer perspective. And perspective challenges illusions. So yes, people treat you differently. They always have. But now the reasons are clearer. They are responding to your boundaries, to your calm, to your unwillingness to be rushed, reshaped, or reduced. This stage of life reveals a powerful truth. Respect is no longer something you negotiate, it is something you embody. And embodiment doesn't argue. There is a quiet relief that comes when you accept this, when you stop trying to be understood by everyone. Understanding becomes optional. Self-respect becomes essential. You realize that those who truly see you do not need explanations, and those who demand them never really listened. This is where dignity settles in, not as pride, but as alignment. You walk away sooner. You stay silent longer. You trust yourself more deeply. And that changes everything. The world may get louder, more rushed, more reactive, but you don't. You become steady, and steadiness is rare. People feel it even when they can't name it. They respond with distance or deference, with discomfort or respect. Either way, the revelation is complete. You were never meant to be everything to everyone. You were meant to become yourself. And after 50, that truth no longer whispers. It stands, quietly, unmoved, at peace. This is not the end of relevance. It is the beginning of authority without force. And those who recognize it will meet you there.